One of the hardest things about investing is figuring out which companies to invest in. Especially if you're new to the game, then it can be very overwhelming because there are so many opportunities out there. And that is exactly why I've made today's video, where we will be building the perfect dividend portfolio using only 6 stocks. And the goal of this portfolio is to build something that is very well diversified. And that means we want to be investing into different sectors and different industries. And this will reduce our overall risk of investing, because we will not be relying on the performance of a single company or a specific part of the market. We want to have companies that we can count on and that historically has performed really well and that has been very consistent with paying out dividends every single year. So we are going to be looking for blue chip stocks. However, it is important to mention that past performance is no guarantee for future performance. So a company that has performed really well might not continue doing so. It could, but there is no guarantee. And moving straight to the first sector on my list, and here we have the consumer staples sector. And this one is one of my personal favorite sectors to invest in. And you will also recognize a lot of the companies being mentioned here. And as the name suggests, then are the companies within this sector very stable. And that means they don't really get impacted that much by changes in the economic environment. Their products are basically always in demand. And that makes it a very defensive and stable sector to invest in. And as you can see here, that some of the companies that does make up this sector are basically companies like Costco, Coca-Cola, the Hershey Company, PepsiCo, Procter & Gamble and Walmart. And even though I do believe that all of these companies are great to own, then for our 6 stock dividend portfolio, then we're gonna go with PepsiCo. And this is a very strong company with some amazing brands like Pepsi, Lay's, Gatorade, Quaker, Mountain Dew and so on. And their products are basically being sold all over the world. And looking at their dividend stats, well then we do see that Pepsi has a very decent dividend yield sitting at 3.2% and a growth of 6.62%, and most impressively, then they have been increasing this dividend here every single year for the last 51 years in a row. And that is very impressive, and it does of course make them a dividend king. And it also makes PepsiCo the perfect company for our 6 stock dividend portfolio. So moving on to the next sector, and here we have the technology sector. And when it comes to the technology sector, then we do have 2 very dominant companies, and that is Apple and Microsoft. And I don't really think you can go wrong with either of these companies. They are both absolutely amazing companies, and many investors, including myself, we like to have not only one of these companies in our portfolio, but both of these companies in our portfolios. But for our 6 stock dividend portfolio, then we are gonna pick Microsoft, which is an absolutely amazing company. And they are involved in so many different things. And they are one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world, at whatever it is that they decide to do. And looking at their dividend stats, well, then we do see that Microsoft does have a dividend yield sitting at 0.69%, which is a pretty low yield. But what they do lack in the dividend yield, they do make up for in the dividend growth, where they do have a dividend growth rate of 10.20%, and that is pretty good. And they have been increasing this dividend every single year for the last 19 years in a row, and that is pretty good as well. And they will most likely continue doing this for many years to come. And next up, we're going to look at the industrial sector, which is a really nice one as well, because there are so many subsectors here, and there are so many companies to consider. And some of these companies are absolutely vital for the worldwide infrastructure. And there is a lot of great companies to choose from, like Waste Management, United Pacific, Deere & Company and Lockheed Martin. And for our 6 stock portfolio, then we are going to go with Waste Management, which I do think is a pretty safe one to own, considering that the demand for trash collection is really high and the amount of trash we have is rapidly increasing as well. But anyways, moving on to the dividends, and here we do see that they have a dividend yield sitting at 1.34%, a 5-year growth rate of 8.21%, and they have been increasing this dividend every single year for the last 20 years in a row. So moving on to the 4th industry and the 4th dividend stock for our perfect 6 stock dividend portfolio. And this one is going to be found within the healthcare sector. And there is a lot of great companies to choose from, like Abbott, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, United Health and so on. And when it comes to the healthcare sector, then we are going to go with Abbott for our 6 stock dividend portfolio. And this is a great pharmaceutical company with some absolutely amazing products that is helping people all over the world. And the products are of course always in very high demand, And I do believe that over the long term, that is Abby gonna perform very, very well because they have some absolutely amazing products and they are very good at innovating new products as well. And looking at the dividend stats, well then we do see that Abby is looking pretty good here as well, as they do have a dividend yield sitting at 3.57%, a 5-year growth rate of 8.01%, and they have been increasing this dividend every single year for 10 years in a row. And that is pretty good when considering that Abby was created as a spin-off company back in 2013. So they have actually been paying dividends every single year since that. So moving on to the fifth sector, and here we have the energy sector, and we basically have two companies to choose from, and that is Chevron and Exxon. And both of these companies are really good when it comes to dividends. But for our 6-stock portfolio, then we are gonna go with Chevron, which is also the slightly better option when it comes to dividends, as they do have a dividend yield sitting at 4.15%, a 5-year growth rate of 6.33%, and they have been increasing this dividend yield every single year for the last 36 years in a row, and that is pretty good. And overall, then is Chevron just a really nice company to have in your portfolio. And moving on to the last sector and the last stock in my Perfect 6 dividend stock portfolio, and we're going to be taking a look at the real estate sector here. And for this one, then we're just going to pick the monthly dividend king, Realty Income Corp. And this company does have a huge real estate portfolio consisting of more than 13,000 properties, and they do have tenants within 85 different industries, and their biggest tenants are very well-known companies like Dollar General, Walgreens, Dollar Tree, 7-Eleven, and so on. And as I mentioned before, then is Realty Income Corp known as the Dividend King, and that is of course because they're paying dividends every single month, and that is really nice as a dividend investor. And the dividends for this company is really solid. As you can see here, then they do have a dividend yield coming in at 5.84%, a 5-year growth rate of 3.55%, and they have been growing this dividend every single year for the last 26 years in a row. So these are basically the 6 stocks that you need in order to build a perfect 6-stock dividend portfolio. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this dividend portfolio, and if you have any of these stocks within your dividend portfolio. Thank you for watching the video, and see you guys in the next one.